I think the chance was inviting me here. That's the chance. And I thought I was in Dusseldorf this morning. I didn't know. So, hi, everybody. This is really creatively amazing to see all these people here. This is really cool. So I am going to talk a little bit about chance, but really what I want to talk about is creativity. And I want to talk about, if you saw, did anybody see the minute and a half thing that I did? The little video that Myriad Media did? Well, I'm so sorry. I'm going to do 18 minutes of that. So, but what I want to talk about is I want to talk about creative people. And I want to start with a slide here that we're just going to look at that for a second. That's crazy, right? Look at that. So this is the world without creative people. That's what that is. There's no content. There's no narrative. There's no beauty, there's no form, there's no detail, there's no passion. It is a white hole. It's the exact opposite of a black hole. And what I think is really interesting about this is it's a really great metaphor for opportunity and terror, right? As creative people, we face that every day. We look into that little white hole, and we have to fill that every day. And so I find that kind of fascinating. It's also, it's sort of an honor to be able to make a living at that. If you had told your 12-year-old self, hey, you're going to get to make a living drawing pictures, you're going to get to make a living designing type, you're going to get to make a living coding, you would say, that is the coolest thing ever. But when I kind of think about how the creative people are treated in our industry, it's a little weird. I can't think of another industry where the experts in the industry are treated like crap. Are generally treated like crap. It's kind of strange. It's like, think about like an engineering firm, and the people running that company go, you got to watch those engineers, man. They'll engineer stuff. They'll work on stress tolerances. That's what they care about. So while I can't say that I know a lot about creativity, what I can say, I know what it's not. And I don't know if you can see that, but that says creativity is not a department. It's actually a culture. And when you think about the creative companies that are out there, it's so obvious that creativity makes a difference. It's so obvious that creativity changes things. And yet, and I'm going to speak from an advertising perspective right now, but I think this goes beyond advertising. I think it's very strange that our clients don't always treat us like we know what we're doing. The business side doesn't always treat us like we know what we're doing. And that's mind-blowing. Think about that for a second. That's crazy. So what I thought I would do is kind of, what I'm really talking about here is art for commerce. I'm not talking about art. Art is something that gets to be whatever it wants to be. You get to interpret art however you want to interpret it. I'm talking about art for commerce. I'm talking about, and my obvious conceit here is I'm in advertising design, product design, that sort of thing. But I think if you kind of think about what you do, this is this really great quote. I don't know if you, can you guys read these slides? Can you see them? All right, I'm going to read it out loud then. I'm going to do what you're not supposed to do and read a slide. That says, do not make something unless it is both necessary and useful. If it is both necessary and useful, do not hesitate to make it beautiful. And I think that is a perfect kind of encapsulation of what we do in any creative endeavor. And this is art for commerce. So we actually have to make something happen. We actually have to have purpose to what we do. We have to think about it before we do it and then make sure it does it. Art doesn't have to do that. Art just gets to be weird and provoking you and crazy or whatever it is, or beautiful. We actually have to try to make something happen. So when you think about the creative people that sort of come in every day to do this, it's an amazing way to make a living, and it's pretty exciting. But I think the business side, I think that the business side of our industry tends to propagate myths about us that I want to talk about. So the first one is that creative people are not reliable. I think that's a myth that creative people are not reliable. I see that in companies all the time. I have worked at very, very big agencies in New York City. I've worked at very, very small agencies in Portland, Oregon. And I now work in a small company. And I've seen kind of the gamut of how creative people are treated. I've actually seen, I just want to share a story from Portland, Oregon. There's a really fantastic art director out there. I will not say his name. He's not there anymore, but this is 20 years ago. Fantastic, fantastic guy. He was famous for being locked away in a studio by himself, and you weren't allowed to talk to him because you would pull him, he would get distracted. He would get distracted. So they were like, please don't talk. I'll call him Joe. His name's not Joe. But they would say, don't talk to Joe. If you talk to Joe, like, we won't get anything done. And so I then left Portland, and I kind of came back to the East Coast. 5 years later, Joe's a creative director at a really big agency in New York City running a group. About 2 years after that, he was the chief creative officer of that. He was co-creative director of that office, which is amazing. So what happened in the 5 years where don't talk to Joe, he'll get distracted, to he's running a global account at a major New York agency that was a really great creative agency, and he was doing really interesting work. And my argument would be that the conditions changed around which he worked. He did not change. I know him. I ran into him at a client meeting one time. We were pitching the same client. And he was the same guy. So what I would say with that is, for you as creative people, do not be tagged with that. Do not let yourself be tagged with that. You need to earn your own accountability. And in fact, at Baldwin and, the mortal sin at our company is not doing something, not failing. It's not doing something weird. It's not angering a client. It's not coming through. It's saying you'll do something and not doing it. That's the mortal sin at our company. That's where you get in trouble. If you say, I'll have it here, and you don't show up, you are in big trouble. That's it. That's pretty much the one thing that'll get you in trouble at our company. So don't be unreliable. Another myth is that creative people are insane. And I'm going to argue that creative people, that's not a myth. Creative people are insane. And they're supposed to be insane. You get paid to be insane. You have to bring a little bit of insanity to face that white square we were talking about earlier. And here's what I think it really is. It's not that we're insane. We're passionate about weird shit. We will spend 8 hours kerning type. We will sweat over one word in a headline or a piece of copy. And if you change that one word, you ruin the entire thing. And we're right. It's true. You need to kill that idea if it starts to lose its power. So are we insane? I don't think we're insane. I think we care about weird shit. And I think you need to celebrate that weird shit that we care about. And I can see why a civilian, what I would call a civilian, would go, why do you care about that? But I think we're all the recipients of Steve Jobs caring about where the click wheel worked on the iPod and sweating over those details. Those are the things that make the difference. Those little tiny things, it's the creative kind of win is won or lost at that last little detail. That's what happens. That's what we all do. And do we all care about that? We do, right? It's crazy. So if you don't get that, we're insane. But we're not insane. Here's what this leads to. This viewpoint of creative people as insane, unreliable weirdos, it leads companies to treat you like a billable resource. And I don't know how many of you can relate to this. Have you ever been told you have 8 hours to do something? You have to do this in 8 hours. And it's not because there's only 8 hours to do it. It's because I'm trying to hold a margin, right? I think that's stupid. I think that is a stupid way to run a business. And I'll tell you why. Because we don't sell hours. We sell our ideas, and we sell our passion, and we sell our effort. And so at the end of the day, it's not how many hours you worked, it's what was your output. And if you think about it, I was asked the other day if we were profitable. And I said, if you're asking me whether we bring in $1 more than we spend, yes. But if you ask me what our hourly rate is, it's in the dirt, because we care about weird shit. And we're constantly trying to make something better, and we don't care how long it takes us to do. So we never say you have 8 hours to do something. We say it's due on Tuesday. Manage that promise. If you're not going to have it on Tuesday and it's going to be Wednesday, let me know on Monday so I can manage that promise to our clients. So it's about managing promises, and it's about really caring about weird shit. And I think that that's how we have built Baldwin and. That's what we've been working to this entire time. And it's about accountability, and it's about trying to always make sure that we sweat over everything we put out. And my name is literally on everything that goes out the door. It's weird when your name's on a building. It's the first time in my life I've had a name on a building. But you know, when people see our work, I feel like it's me. And so we want to make sure it's as great as it can be. And I'm not saying we have not added to the blight that is our advertising culture. But so a few years ago, well, this is the saying that I want you guys all to say when you get treated this way. When someone comes in and says, hey, listen, I know you think it should be blue, but I want it to be red. And I know you think that font should be 8-point, but I want it to be 10-point. I don't want you to make it bold, and I want it to be Helvetica. I don't want it to be DIN. You know what you're going to say? You want fries with that? A few years ago, Taylor mentioned this, I was part of a really talented group of people that made a movie called Art and Copy. If you haven't seen it, it is about advertising, but it's about so much more. It's about, everybody says, oh, I hate advertising. We hear that a lot, but really everybody has their favorite advertising. And what this movie is about is the people who have dared to make that kind of 5% of advertising that's really good, and that's trying to add to the culture, and that's trying to engage you. And that's what that movie's about. But there's one of my favorite scenes in it is from a guy named Lee Clow. And I do have to say, I said this quote, a bastardized version of this quote in my video that Myriad did, and people started tweeting out like I said it. I was ripping off Lee Clow. So I'm just saying it now. So at the end of this, if you go like, hey, David said this, Lee said it. He's way more Clow than me.
I'm Lee Clow, and you're at the Los Angeles office of TBWA Chiat Day, and I'm worldwide chairman and chief creative officer. When I got into the business, I was working for an agency who represented everything that's wrong with the advertising business. It was run by a guy who basically was unscrupulous. He would do anything to keep a client. He would do anything to win a client. And he basically had mostly contempt for the entire creative department. It was this, how big do you want the logo, sir? All they cared about is milking money out of clients and giving them what they want, that kind of formula that makes for so much of the bad work in our industry. And it almost seemed deceitful to allow clients to dictate mediocre work and then pay us for it when we aspired to do something better. So I was the head of the escape committee because it was kind of like, we can't stay here. This is the devil's workshop. We have to find our way into agencies that believe in the right stuff. And I was lucky enough to discover Chiat Day, which was just being born at this time. And Jay Chiat and Guy Day were the pirate spirit, rebel spirit that I was trying to champion over at this dopey agency. And by the time I left there, they basically said, don't allow him back in the building. They realized that I was kind of an insidious cancer in their company because I was preaching the rebellion of creative people rise up. They can't do shit unless we make ads for them. You know, we should be in charge.
We should be in charge. I would argue that there are no creative companies that are truly awesome that weren't started by creative people at some point. They're just not. I mean, it's very difficult to find them. So in this crucible, in this last inch of approval, this is one of the things that we'll hear a lot, which is, this is no time for art. And I've had it many times where you're showing rough cuts and a client will say, I don't like that ending. I don't like that ending. It's going to offend people, or I don't get it, or whatever. And I say, well, let me, I showed it to my boss. They don't like it. I say, let me talk to them. I need to talk to them. And they'll say, oh, this is no time to talk to them. This is no time. This is no time to put the artist in front of them. We got to get this done. And I say, this is exactly when I need to talk to them. You must let me talk to them. And this is what happens to all of us, this is no time for art. There's a friend of mine, this is a totally overheard story, but a friend of mine back in my New York days told me that one of his senior account people, he was trying to show some work for a client, which I'm about to say, and the guy said, look, man, all this creative stuff's great, but I got to move Funyuns. So Again, just ignoring the notion that creativity is good for business. There have been a number of studies done, and I'm only going to share 2 of them with you right now, but if you Google creative results and studies creative results, McKinsey, there's a guy named Peter Field, another guy named James Herman. If you Google that, you can get these studies. They're very readily found. But here's what's amazing, and I'm going to share 2 of these. One is that Peter Field, which is in association with the IPA, which is an organization in the UK that's concerned with advertising effectiveness, did a study on creative advertising. And here's what they found. Creatively awarded campaigns were 11 times more efficient at generating a market share increase. It says creatively awarded campaigns were much more certain to achieve that result. The less creative campaigns were not only less efficient, but also less predictable than the creatively awarded ones. This suggests a departure from the conventional wisdom that a more creative approach is a riskier one. So let's just think about that for 1 second. It's unsafe to play it safe. And I got a chart to prove it. So just think about that. That's pretty mind-blowing. It's actually incredibly intuitive. Think about the companies that you love. Think about the brands you love. Think about the things you love. It's always the things that are amazing, that provoke you, that get you to think differently. That's what that is. But when you're in this sort of decision-making process, you can't always see it. So try to show that chart. Here's another one that is amazing. Companies that are more creative are more successful. Cannes Advertiser of the Year experienced, on average, a 41% stock value growth in the year they won the award. The S&P 500 experienced a fraction of that growth at 0.5%. Further analysis reveals that in each case, the companies had been going through a period of greater focus on creativity and innovation throughout their business, of which award-winning advertising and stock market success were symptomatic. This has nothing to do with the awards, by the way. We don't even talk about awards at Baldwin and they almost never come up. Almost never come up internally. They almost never come up. We never talk about them with clients. The issue is orientation. The issue is being oriented around creativity and letting your creativity lead the way. And that, I think, is amazing. It's just an amazing chart. And creative people we need charts, man. All right, so really the point I'm making is creativity is culture. And now I do want to talk about chance for a second. I started Baldwin and 6 years ago with some very talented people. And it is a we, that ampersand is on purpose. It's a we organization. I've done nothing on my own. But the one thing I will say is, I was 46 when we started that company, which is old in advertising years. And when I started Ponysaurus with Nick and Kyle, and there's Nick and Rochelle back there. Raise your hand, Nick. That's Nick. So I was 51. So you're not supposed to do that when you're 46 and 51 to try to start cool companies. And so I felt like this is an opportunity now to put things I believe on the table and really try to navigate by them. And I call it navigating by sphincter, by the way. You just kind of go, my sphincter's puckering up, we're doing it. So, but it is actually interesting. One of the things we do at Baldwin and all the time is the thing that scares us is what we lean into. We do it all the time, and one of my partners, Bob Renew, if you guys don't know who Bob Renew is, he's the genius of the 2 of us, for sure. I mean, he's just a guy can do anything. It's crazy. Google Bob Renew in motorcycle design. Just look at what he does. But he is just always, he'll look at me and go, that one scares me. Let's do that one. It's awesome. But I do want to talk about just a couple of really simple things that I think you guys could all take back to your companies. If you're running a company, try this. If you're working at a company that needs to try this, bring it up with them. These are just really simple things. And let's see if we can get that. That says this week. Isn't that awesome? And that one says, first step is admitting you have a problem. And what I would say is if you're actually running one of these companies, pull your creative people together, grab your strategic department, have them do a study, find out how creatively motivated everybody is in your company. Find out if your company feels like it's actually a creative company and that it's a creatively led company. And by that, I do not mean the creative people are the ones leading it. Everybody at Baldwin and is a creative person. If you're a project manager, you may not be doing the creative, but you bring creativity to what you do. But find out if you have a problem. You may not. There's a lot of great companies in this town. But if you do, here's a couple things to think about. One thing that I think is an awesome opportunity is become a client of your creative department internally. Put your creative department to work on an issue that you have. And this is any size company. You know, if you need to find a new way to do timesheets, put your creative department on it. They will come up with something cool. They're creative people. Here's another thing that I think is really simple. Reverse the decision-making structure of big decisions. And we do this from time to time. We do it on really important decisions. I'll share a story with you. About 3 years ago, we were called by a credit union. And we just have been very, very careful about the kind of clients that we've worked with. We want to work with a certain kind of client that wants to do certain things and live in the world in a certain way. And I was like, I could get excited about a credit union depending on who they are. Went back to kind of all of our founders, and we all went, I don't know. I'm not sure. So we went to our junior-most copywriter at the time, a guy named Chad, who was just a fabulously talented guy. And I said, Chad, here's the facts. Here's the revenue. Here's the account. Here's what kind of work credit unions often do. And we laid out all these things, and I said, get back to me at the end of the day with whether or not we should go meet with them. And he did. And he came back and said, I think you should go meet with them. And it was a disastrous meeting. They didn't like us. We didn't like them. But Chad made that decision. The founders of the company did not want to go have that meeting. We just didn't want to. But Chad actually was very mature about it, and he said, here's why I think you should do it. And he had really good reasoning. But we do that from time to time, and there's a lot of different ways that we do it. We will sometimes just pull a group of people in and say, look, here's what needs to be decided. Decide, let us know. We've also put a coffee can with yes or no vote. Just put a yes or no on it, and then we'll look and see, was it a yes or was it a no? And we make decisions that way a lot. And the reason that we do that is I want people to want to work on things. I want people to be excited about what they're working on. And I want it to be their decision. I want them to own the agency as much as I do. This one says, put people who bitch in charge of what they're bitching about. And here's the interesting thing about creative people. We're problem solvers, right? That's what we do. At the end of the day, we solve a problem. It's the shaker philosophy I shared earlier, which is making things that are beautiful and necessary. A lot of times we'll actually bitch about problems. Well, we're problem solvers. There's an irony there. So I actually love the minute somebody in the company says, like, why don't we ever X? I'll go, well, you're now in charge of it. Get back to me on Tuesday. And here's two things that happen. Something happens, or they stop bitching. And it's foolproof. It's a foolproof method. You just have to follow through. And lastly, this might take a little bit more time, but try mixing in your creative department into the rest of the company. Particularly if you have a company where you've got an internal creative department and they're all kind of holed away on their own thing. Try mixing them in. Why not? I guarantee you the creative people won't get more quiet and conservative. That won't happen. It'll make a more fun environment. So those are just some very, very simple things that we do that I think you guys could easily implement at your companies to do. That said, you'll notice that most of these are kind of written to the business owners and the business side of it and the suits of this thing. At the end of the day, if you're a creative person, do not let them put you into these cliches. Do not let them feed you into the myths. Do not be unreliable. Be your word. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Under-promise and over-deliver. Live that way. Don't be insane. Be passionate. Let them know why it's important that you spend all day working on a clipping issue if you're doing 3D modeling. Let them know why. They will understand. They will appreciate it. And at the end of the day, if that doesn't happen, rise up. They can't do shit without you. So thank you very much.